你有看到吗？我发了名在里面。
Okay. Hi guys, how are you? You're all Figma experts now. Okay, so I want to do a quick roll. Rashid? Yeah? Juliana is there, I can see her. Chen Yang. Okay, I'm going to watch you 2 more seconds so I can remember. Chen Yang, 2. Okay, Deepak Chowdhury. Deepak. Okay. Jonala Harshini. Okay. Lauren, I know there. Priya, I know. Piyush. Yes, I know Piyush as well. Jita. Jita is there, okay. Kim Song, I saw already. Yes. Jinya. Brian? Too far away from it. Okay, Vamsi Krishna. Vamsi Deepak. Piyush. Rashid. See, I'm learning. Ananya. Sravani is not here because she said she had some issues. Aditya? Aditya. Okay. Josian. All right. Madhuri. Satya. Shian. Okay. Nivan. Gojian Wang. Wanjiang Zhu. Jia Yu, yes. Yuan Zhanjiang. Yuan Zhan. Yuming Zhao. And Jingjing Zhu. Okay, we have. Huh? No, I already marked you because I know you. So the only one not present is Sravani. Excellent. We can start. Everybody's here. Guys, so today we are going to do Flutter layout, and we're really going to start coding and like doing screens and doing things on the screen. But I would still like to get a few students up here to show their Figma. Whoever wants to. I mean, not everyone, but like a few that would come up and show. Maybe one from each group. That would be great. You want to come, Rashid? Yeah. Come on.
Like different pages or pages?
I'm going to try to open it, but you can come. You do it yourself. Anybody else wants to go? Get prepared. Rashid, before you... Okay, sure.
So I've redesigned the whole screen, but like I've kept it little bit similar, but made a few changes here and there. The main changes, rather than having the threads, so basically the threads are like these. These threads I've created much more cleaner look. So there's a drop-down menu that when you click it, it shows all the threads. So it's much more cleaner than the previous, the original look. You do also have your groups and friends like the original. And there's a profile tab that I've created that's pretty similar to the original one. And there's an add expense, but like I've made a few changes to like buttons here and there. And there's an overlay of changing the date, and that's probably it.
And the close button closes?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, excellent, very good. Anybody else wants to show? I've seen Sissy's the other day and that was great, but if you want to show to people, you're welcome. Yeah? Yeah, come on, come on. You have your computer on now.
I just submit my homework.
The problem is it's a little bit temperamental with this thing, so you need USB-C or Oh, it won't open anything.
Oh,
so
okay, I know.
just copy and
it.
paste,
Okay.
yeah. Or view in a
Oh,
new tab, maybe.
Yeah, I just mock up the widgets app, listen to it. So yeah, so here I just do the pop-up here. This is the list of the its set pages. Can change this here.
Is that the ordering?
Yeah, but the content is not changed here.
Okay, that's fine.
And this is the set page here. And here you can drag this
Oh,
to see
great.
this card. And then you can go to the flash card here. And then you can flip it and see
Wow.
the content here.
Wow,
Yes,
amazing.
this one. And
Okay.
also has another pop-up here to change this button here.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Wow,
Yeah, and then,
really good. Wonderful. Did you enjoy it?
yes,
Excellent.
really interesting.
Excellent. Anybody else? Anybody else wants to go? No one? We had splitwise, we had the quizzes, we had second time the splitwise. What else did we have? We had the food ordering app. Shinze, your food ordering app was good.
No,
Huh?
think I still need to fix the scrolling. This.
Yeah? Anybody from your team wants to show something? Because your app was very colorful, I liked it. The cards and everything. Okay. All right, no pressure. If maybe later, but let us get going. So the whole idea with the Figma exercises, it effectively mimics all the elements, all the widgets that we have in in Flutter. So therefore, we're going to see all of them, and something that what was her name? Jing Jing.
Thank you.
Should remember some jingle bells. Okay. So what Jing Jing did with with sort of like the transitions, flipping over and everything, those are also going to be in this animated containers, animated switchers. One of the groups have this as a project, right? One of the groups is going to talk about intrinsic animations. Another group is going to do explicit animations. All of these things we're going to cover. So pretty much, much more than what we've seen in Figma, we will actually code ourselves. Okay, so in the last class, we got the Flutter Hello World app running. And what we also did was we started creating some widgets, putting them on the screen, and started getting some idea about containers, layout, etc. But today we're going to look at the key layout elements and positioning, sizing of these elements, and how, what is the logic that they have in painting themselves on the screen, in presenting the children on the screen. Okay? So first, let's start with some concepts. So the mobile screen has two areas in the bottom and in the top, which has sort of an obstructed view, right? Over here you have that white line which you use to, change apps. And up there you will have the camera or the notch or the speaker. On top of it, the screen here has a radius, so you're losing some content there. So all of these things make these areas sort of, in Flutter words, unsafe. So therefore, in Flutter, you have a concept called safe area. And safe area is basically this area. Anything inside that view paddings is the safe area for Flutter. And there is one more thing that affects our UI, which is when the keyboard is in display, right? So when the keyboard is in display, is your scaffold or your screen staying behind the keyboard, and you were just trying to fill in a form here, and all of a sudden, when the keyboard is open, the form is covered with the keyboard, and then you have to go up and pull up your form to see that form, even though you clicked into that form element, okay? So this is called a view inset, and these view inset is, I don't know what else can be the view inset other than the keyboard, but generally the view inset is on the bottom, and it's created by the keyboard. If I have any other examples coming to me, it'll come. But these concepts, right, you should know these concepts, view padding and view insets. And view inset is a temporary thing. View padding is a permanent thing, and it's your choice to use the area of the view padding for your code or not. You have ability to specify that in Scaffold. Okay, so that's the most basic element. So the device gives us a screen, and it tells us on top of it, these areas are obscured, etc. So then comes the most, basic widget, not basic, but the core widget that displays a screen, which is the scaffold. It has an AppBar, we have seen this. It has a body, and optionally it can have a floating action button, and optionally it can have a bottom AppBar, okay? So they are a bit self-explanatory. Now, one of the things that you can add to the scaffold is a drawer. drawer is this top left-hand corner in an app where you click and a drawer comes up with different menu options, etc. And the way the drawer comes, it pushes onto the navigation stack. It pushes something onto the navigation stack. And closing that is popping that route from the navigator. So navigator keeps those routes on top of it, popping. So you should remember this navigator of context.pop. You will use that many times. Whenever you display a dialog, etc., the close button of the dialog, you'll have to link it to this command, navigator of context.pop. Now, the bottom sheet is a sheet that appears under the bottom app bar, and you can have a fixed bottom sheet. You know, for example, you have an app which is just launched. You're trying to show a feature at the bottom, etc. You can do that, or you can show ads there, etc. And then there is another component of Scaffold, which is modal bottom sheet. Now, modal bottom sheet is that when you click on something, for example, camera controls, etc., will come up from the bottom. You will do that, and when you click outside, they will come down. And the way you operate it is scaffold of context, because you're in a certain point, and it just pushes that bottom sheet on that scaffold. And then to close, again, you do the same thing, navigator of context pop, okay? So another one is snack bar. Who knows what's a snack bar? Yeah?
Is it like when you send an email and at the bottom it's like email sent or something?
Bingo. So whenever you do something, you want to give a little message to the user, something happened, a file has uploaded, etc. It's not a notification per se, but it's sort of a subtle message. So that's the thing that pops up from the bottom and then disappears by itself. You don't have to click it. And this, remember we talked about the bottom, the view inset, right? Resize to avoid bottom inset is something that you can give the scaffold, right? Because remember, the scaffold is thinking that he's occupying all this space. He's occupying the space from here to here. And then what it's doing is it's painting the app bar, bottom app bar. It's, okay, the floating action button sits somewhere there. Then it's painting the body, and then it's painting the app bar, or basically painting the top app bar and bottom app bar, and then the middle is the body. But if you set this property to true, then whenever the keyboard has come up, then Scaffold will say, oh, my dimensions changed. They're not giving me that much space anymore. I have a smaller space, and I need to repaint myself. So that's an important thing to consider with the scaffold. Now, in the app bar, you have this property called actions. Okay, it's written small, but this property called actions, and actions is a list of widgets. For example, you can have here the person's avatar for user settings, and here you could have app settings, whatever. And here you can have something else if you want, or you can have 2 or 3 or 1, whatever it is, but this needs a list of widgets. And these widgets, typically, they will be icon buttons. Then you have the title widget, and you have a leading widget. Okay, the leading widget is the leftmost widget. The thing is, if you have a page which has the possibility of popping, okay, let's understand what that means. One second, let's write that here. Okay, so what that means is that you've painted a scaffold on the screen as a root on top of an existing page. Okay, for example, you have a list of menu items. You click on the menu item, something comes on top of it. It doesn't replace that page, but it comes on top as a stack. Okay, when that comes as a stack, it will respond to navigator of context.pop. Okay, it will respond to popping, but the most bottom scaffold is not going to pop because he's going to say, where am I going to go? But anything above has the ability to pop. And if it can pop, this automatically imply leading. What it does is that, okay, so this one can pop, so let me put a back button here. And what it does automatically, of course, is that the drawer function, the menu function, is usually you don't get the menu function on the pages that are on the stack. So, for example, in the food ordering app, your home menu, you'll have a drawer or whatever main menu on the left-hand side. Sorry, I'm painting this. On the left-hand side, I have to do it like this. On the left-hand side, you have the menu button, the burger button. And then, but when you click on the item to order that item, it becomes a poppable page with a close or cancel, etc., etc. And there you don't have the drawer button. So automatically imply leading and drawer, they don't clash from that point of view. Okay? So let's write here as well for you. Usually in poppable pages, you don't have drawer. Okay? Because, the whole point is that the whole point is that this leading widget is where actually the drawer sits, the drawer button sits. So who is going to take precedence is done with this logic. Any questions so far?
Can you show an example of the automatically implementing?
We will show all of the examples after I go through the slides. We're going to start coding, and we're going to do all the examples. Okay? All right. Now, the two most basic elements: column and row. Now, all the widgets, they have a space that they're going to be painted on. Okay, let's call it a constraint. Whatever constraint it is, the column knows I have these constraints. Okay? So within those constraints, a column by itself, what it will try to do is it's going to try to fill that area in the main axis direction as much as possible. If you don't, say something to it. Okay? So the important concept here is the intrinsic size of the children. Okay? What does the intrinsic size of the children mean? The intrinsic size of the children is 1, 2, 3 child widgets, right? And they have an intrinsic size, this much. They don't need this much. They have this much intrinsic size. If you specify for the column main axis size minimum, then the column is not going to try to fill the entire space. The column is going to just wrap its children and stop. Okay? So otherwise, it will try to fill the entire space by default. Now, the reason I'm paying so much attention to this is that if you try to put a column like this, and you also try to put something ListView, which will come in a minute, and they both are trying to expand that space, or you put one column inside a column and they're both trying to expand their size, they're going to find who's going to expand, right? So they're going to have a fight, and then Flutter will say, okay, there's an error. So pay attention to this concept as much as you can, and anytime you get these layout errors and pages of garbage on the debug screen, I bet it has to do with these sizing, that you've nested too many things within each other, and they're fighting with each other to take the space. Now the column, again, we can pull it in by saying main axis size min. So main axis size of the column is in this direction where the widgets are laid out, and the cross axis is basically in this direction. Okay? So for row, I haven't done here obviously, but the main axis for the row is in the horizontal direction, and cross axis for the row in the vertical direction. Okay? So that's self-explanatory. So the next thing is something called main axis alignment. So we know that both of these columns have not been restrained on the main axis size, right? We haven't restrained it, so therefore they fill this space. But now the children widgets, how should they be placed in this bigger space than they need? Okay, so this is the default one, main axis alignment start. So you can this will put the widgets on the top. Main axis alignment and I'm gonna just explain in a second, is this. But there is a few other things, main axis alignment space between. Okay, so then it will try to distribute it evenly. There's a few other ones that you can see and test and understand what they mean. There's one I think which leaves a space here, puts one here, leaves a space, puts one, leaves a space, and leaves a space here. So it's space around evenly. The space around them becomes even. So we can test all of these things later. Now, one thing with Flutter is this start and end. Okay, let me make a note here. Start and end are designed as left and right, but to accommodate right to left languages, it's notated as start and end. So does this explanation make sense to you, what I wrote here, or shall I explain? So for languages like Arabic, right, the language is written from right to left, okay? So for an Arabic text, the left is right is the start, and left is the end. But for Latin text, it's vice versa. So in order to do that, depending on your locale, etc., start and end means always this thing in Flutter. And okay, in this case, it's just in terms of this column box, but more importantly for text, it becomes important. Okay.
What about vertical text?
Vertical text?
Like languages that go vertically?
That I don't know. If you find out about it, tell us, please. So the other one important is cross-axis alignment. So the default is cross-axis alignment dot center. So when you paint a column, and these widgets have these intrinsic sizes, right? They are not filling the entire space. When you do a column, when you don't put the cross-axis alignment, they will be put in the center of the column. If you put start, they will be left aligned. If you put end, they will be right aligned. And I don't know what other options there are, but that's the cross-axis alignment. So the three main alignment things in column are cross-axis alignment, main axis alignment, and main axis size, which obviously has to do with all the layout issues. Any questions? Okay. Now we're coming to the single child scroll view. You've seen this in the code, but let's try to understand what this single child scroll view does. So let's say I have a constraint. So this could be the body of my scaffold. And Scaffold has calculated this is the space you have. Tells me this is the space you have. So I put a single child scroll view in here. It has a column in it, but for this thing to work like this, the column has to be, first of all, bounded by this main axis size dot min property. Okay, main axis size property has to be set to min, so the column doesn't try to grow to infinity. And the single child scroll view just stops here, and no issue. But if the column inside is bigger than the single child scroll view, the single child scroll view occupies this space, but inside it, the column sits, so it becomes scrollable. Okay, this is the same idea that you've seen in Flutter, in Figma, where you've put a frame, and then you put something bigger inside the frame, and then it becomes scrollable. Okay, so that's the single child scroll view. One important thing is that to check if a scroll view is the primary scroll view, because for each screen there has to be a primary scroll view. But if there is multiple scroll views on the screen, you want to specify one of them as primary, all the other ones not as primary, so that you can go up and down. And we'll come to that now. So for example, this was what we had before in the previous page. But let's think about this example. Okay, is this possible? Is this doable? Right? So I have my single child scroll view, which fills the entire scaffold body. That's fine. Then I have a column here, and the column is bigger than the scroll view. Actually, I should be extending this down. Here. Okay. I don't know why it's doing that. Sorry. Okay, so the column is bigger than the scroll view, but it sits inside the scroll view and it becomes scrollable. Over here, I have a column which is bigger than the scroll view, so the whole thing will scroll, right? And then the element or the widgets inside the column are again single child scroller, but this time horizontal axis. You know, where do you see this? For example, when you have this is the movies in Apple TV, and this would be, dramas, this would be action movies, etc. So you have a vertical axis of scrolling, but each one has also a horizontal scrolling. So all of that is possible, but here you would call this scroll view the main, but the primary one. Questions? Right. Okay. So I'm talking a lot about this sizing and occupying space, etc. Right? So you have to really think in terms of these things. So there is two objects, two widgets, center and align, and what they do is whatever constraint they are given, they automatically occupy that space. Okay? So the center, for example, if you have the body of a scaffold and the first widget you put in is the center, it occupies the entire space immediately. And then anything you put inside it goes to the center of it. For align, it's similar, except that you have the chance to say, I want to go into the bottom left-hand corner, top right-hand corner, etc., etc. So the align again fills the entire space, and then you select where you put it. Okay, so these are two widgets that occupy the entire space that they can. So container is our go-to widget, right? So container is the go-to widget, and it has a few properties. First of all, in the container, you can define a margin. So the margin in a container is a transparent buffer, which is the edges of that object, right? But it's not painted, it's transparent, and the amount of space it will take in a column, for example, is this much. So from to the column, it will say my intrinsic size is this and this. When you give it a color, the color is only painted inside the padding. So this is your widget that you put inside, the child widget of the container. If you give it a padding, the background of the container is painted, including the padding. With the container, you can have a decoration property if you want to do something more fancy than just color. You have a decoration property where you can specify the border radius. You can specify whether this container should be a circle or a rectangle. You can specify, the border thickness, the color of the border lines. You can specify a lot of things with this decoration property. You can go to various detail with it. You can also specify a width and height to the container. Yes?
So wherever there is margin, that would be just background color, right?
That would be background, yes.
Okay. So once the
It
padding...
takes the space.
Okay.
It takes the space, or it demands the space, but it doesn't paint anything there.
Okay.
So you can specify with an height. Now, the container is not hungry to specify to occupy all the space. The container is more child-centric. You know, it cares about its child and looks at the intrinsic properties of the child and just makes a container around the child. The container is like a wrapper around the child, okay? But you can force the container to push to the ends by giving the width and height doubled at infinity. So doubled at infinity is an interesting construct in Dart that it's a, obviously in computing, when you have 1 over 0, you get error. But double dot infinity somehow is sensible here. The other thing you can have within the container is, because we can size the container arbitrarily, we're not just bound by the size of the child object, we can size the container arbitrarily, therefore we can then use the align property and put the child object wherever we want inside the container. Okay? So these are some of the... now, there is another widget called padding. So the padding widget just deals itself by putting a padding around an object. Right? So the padding widget doesn't do anything. So it's sort of like a very primitive container. But ideally, if you want to just put a padding, for example, you have a text on the screen and you want to make sure that the next text has 10 pixels or 20 pixels apart from it, you put 10 pixels around both of the texts so that they sit nicely. In that case, rather than using a container, padding is better. And SizedBox as well, sometimes you don't need all the things in the container, you just want a box in which the object should stay, but we care about the size of it, or just an empty box, an empty block somewhere that you want to stick in as a size box is also possible. They work with the same mentality of a container. Okay, so this is important. ListView, because this is something that you're going to use a lot for displaying things. ListView can be done in, let's say, 2 different ways, but here I've shown 3. So these 2 are sort of the same thing. This one is different. So you have a fixed list of widgets. You give it to ListView. Because you give it a fixed list, it already knows how many elements there is. You don't need to give a count. And then the ListView will show these things on the screen. Of course, it has a lot of bells and whistles, which we will, explore while we play with it. But that's the ListView. Now, if you have a method of building the list, then you employ this ListView.builder. And the ListView.builder needs an item builder function. Okay, because it doesn't take a list. Instead, it says, I'm going to, you're going to tell me how many items I need to paint on the screen. So you give it an item count, and then you give it a method of how to create these items. And when he's giving me this option to create these items, he gives me, I give you the context, and I give you the index number, okay? So if you told me you have 20 items to paint on the screen, I'm going to ask you one by one, first item, second item, third item. So then if I know the index number of the item being painted, I can return it in the text in this format. So that will just print. For the first item, it will be it's a text widget with 1 in it. The second item will be a text widget with 2 in it, and so on and so forth. So the ListView.builder works in this way. A slight improvement on the ListView builder is the ListView.separated. So it takes the same item builder again, but it gives you the ability to also build a separator builder. And also in the separator builder, it gives you the index. Okay? So if for whatever reason you have a list and you want to display something in the separator for certain index items. Let's say you have a list going like this, and under some of them you want to display a little text explaining something, etc. So it gives you to do this. Or you can do a dumb separator like that, you just put a divider. Okay? And what it does is, obviously, if there is 20 items, it only paints how many of these? 19, right? So it just paints the separator in between the items, not at the very end or at the very beginning. Okay, so this is important. The shrink wrap. ListView is also something that tries to occupy every space that it can get. So if you put the ListView inside a column or some other objects that can clash with it, you will get errors. Like my first gut instinct, instead of trying to read pages and errors, is just put this ListView into a shrink wrap. The shrink wrap property keeps the ListView just to its intrinsic size. It doesn't try to occupy any extra space. So this is something you need to take care of. Another thing, which I've never understood why, but the ListView automatically sets a padding on top of itself. So when you show the ListView on a screen, it automatically shows a padding on itself. So if you don't want to see that padding, and usually I don't, it has a padding property which you need to set to edge in sets.0. Okay? So those are certain sort of pointers of how to deal with these widgets. Right. So other widgets you can look up and learn from the Flutter widget. We will get to them later. For example, there's the wrap widget, which is interesting because it wraps the objects on the screen or widgets on the screen in this fashion. You can specify either right to left, left to right and then down, or vice versa. Then this fitted box widget is interesting. Fitted box widget, you specify it a size, and then, for example, you want to display your logo on the top of your screen from 1/5 to the 4/5, right? So basically 3/5 of the screen you want to display your logo, but every mobile screen is a few different pixels. So how would you do that? Is you can do it with the fitted box. You can do other ways as well. You can do it media query, etc. But the fitted box would just expand the item inside to the size that you want to fix it. So effectively, it zooms in and zooms out of the objects. Another one, also important, is aspect ratio, a widget. Okay. Now, where would I use the aspect ratio is when you, for example, have pictures to show on a frame, right, or on a card. Let's say you have a card, you have pictures to show, and then those pictures you want to show always on a certain aspect ratio. Let's say 4:3 or 16:9, whatever aspect ratio you want to show in your card. But the original pictures, let's say you're making food cards from Uber Eats, whatever, and each picture has different dimensions. And you want it in such a way that it sits into that aspect ratio, and then you specify the clip properties, whether it should clip or not clip, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the widget you get is exactly the proportions that you want, even though the image that goes inside can have arbitrary dimensions. Okay, so aspect ratio is important when you want to display things nicely. Now the table, I don't want to talk too much about it. It's basically the table function in HTML with more bells and whistles. And this is interesting. This is a bit tricky to use. And the idea there is that certain widgets, like text widget, has a baseline property, right? Because every text has a baseline property. So if you have a text that's, for example, Mehmet, right? The baseline and the bottom of the text widget are the same. But if you want to say Jing Jing, right? The baseline and the bottom of the text is not the same because the G is going below the baseline, okay? But if you want to have two text widgets and you want to align them on the baseline, then you want to employ something with this baseline widget, which is a topic, is something that you need to cross when you need to figure out. But that's, as a concept, baseline, the text baseline, and aligning two texts on the baseline, those ideas are dealt with in Flutter as well. So what I have now is this is the sort of overview on layout. I don't know if this was a sufficient sort of layout. There's a lot of information here. Again, the things that we need to think about are always, what these different widgets are trying to do, how they're trying to occupy the space. And then after the break, we'll take a few minutes break. After the break, what we will do is that we will pull the from GitHub repository the code onto our computers. We're going to play with a few things. We're going to do a little bit of Dart. We're going to do random numbers, random colors, placeholders, lorem ipsum, etc. So we're going to have as much as possible fun with just coding and exploring some of these ideas. So if you can come back, let's see. Yeah, if you can come back at 8:10, let's start with that. Let's do a 10-minute break. So we'll get this code onto our computer with a certain tag. So there is, what I'm doing here is I'm doing this. So lecture 4 is the tag for what we ended up on last Thursday. Lecture 5 start is the tag that we're going to pull. If you guys don't want to do break, we can continue. It's fine with me. Continue? Let's do 5 minutes break. Show me your Figma. So this is the frame. It's to be smaller than the computer, right? These two. Okay, first of all, you didn't use layout. You should be reading. actually below, but it's and the other one is out.
你要 full time 一整天才会占用。现在 part time 相当于是外挂 ，full time 现在只用了3个月。
But of course, those things really
那我只能说我干年 intern 的工作，因为他的 SCU 政策3年左右，因为我们是没有公司如果真转正了，他公司差不多要16到17
yeah, you should really be using the photo layout.
如果能够回看，如果少给点，然后前2天刚投各种大的，直接被解放去了，因为我。
直接就打开。
你可以投一投试一试，现在确实。
Wait, so where should we have this in our on our desktop?
必须得要有，就类似于国内那个
Maybe component governance.
Everybody's here, right? Okay, shall we start? Guys, ready? So can you go to my repo on the CSEN 268 repo on GitHub? And if you click on this main, you'll see the tags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tag all of these lectures, where we got to. So whenever you want, you will be able to like pull them and and look what we've done, and so that should be good. All right, so can you clone this repo from here? And then
No, just trying to download this like internet. I can't. So we're not gonna use all of them.
so you go to a directory and then you say git clone. Yeah. So now we have this thing, the folder, and now I'm opening VS Code. Okay, so open the folder and just say git pull. Now the command to display the tags is in the README file. Huh?
Do we need to download everything or just the tag starts lecture 5?
No, clone the repo and then we'll switch to the tag. So with this, you know how to clone the okay, let's do it here again. So you use this command to clone the repo. Right? You select. Okay, so here on the very top, the code, here you copy this URL. You copy this URL, and then you say, and then you do the git clone, this command, git clone, and then you paste that link. Actually, once you clone it, we will continuously be able to use it. So this is the one-time thing, okay?
Git clone.
And then go inside that repo and fire up VS Code. The next thing is we do git pull just to up-to-date everything. And then the next thing is git tag -l or -l, just to list the tags inside that repo. Okay, so git tag. So there was one tag which I've deleted, but it's in my local. Don't pay attention to that. But you should get lecture 4 and lecture 5 start. You see it?
Yes.
Question?
చెక్కలేదు కదా
Okay, so
ఆల్రెడీ అప్ టు డేట్
తర్వాత గిట్ ట్యాగ్
Git tag
okay, so you have that already. So open that directory.
ట్యాగ్
Okay, so the next command to
dash.
so the next thing we want to do, guys, is now we have the tags list, right? So we're going to take one of the tags and create a local branch. Okay? So this command is check out tags and whatever tag we want to put, -b dash b lecture study. So we'll put it lecture 5 study or whatever you want to call for the local branch. So the tag we want to get is lecture 5 start. I always forget the syntax. You check out tags slash lecture 5 start dash b okay, I'm creating a new branch called lecture 5 working. Let me check my branches. So I'm in the branch lecture 5 working. Okay? So you should be in that branch as well, lecture 5 or whatever you call it, lecture 5 study working, whatever you want to call it. So if anybody has not been able to follow, just tell me, otherwise I'm going to continue. Okay, let's fire up our Android emulator. So this should pretty much run the code from Thursday. And this is an old code. Let me just close it and then let me recompile everything. Over here, we still haven't created the it's trying to run the readme.md file. We haven't created the launch.json file. We can do that actually here. So I'm just going to do a launch.json file while we're here. So it created the launch.json file for me with defaults. So now this run and debug menu has release and profile and debug modes. The top one is the debug mode. That's the default Flutter mode is the debug mode. And then you have these. So now we have a launch menu. What did it want?
How did you get the run in? Yeah, like that, like the launch JSON file.
So if you go to this page, before we created the launch JSON file, it tells you create a launch JSON file.
And then which debugger or which?
Well, let me delete this. Okay, so when I'm in this run and debug mode, I says create a launch.json file. You see it? and then I'm just clicking that. It automatically created this for me. Now this one, actually the default Flutter mode is debug. I mean, it doesn't put it, but let's put it for argument's sake. Default Flutter mode. Okay, so now we have our launch.json dealt with. Now let's run the code. So this is already in the debug selected and launching the code.
అక్కడ ఆప్షన్ వచ్చింది మావేస్ పెట్టుకోవచ్చు
Yes.
దీంట్లోనా
Yeah.
launch.json file 全的是bar 和 Flutter 你也没有这个。
We just added. When I said add configuration, it did. No, you don't have to do that. It's already done it. Save it. Here, under VS Code, you have it. So now this button, it has those things. Okay? Yes. Basically. Okay, did you install the Flutter and Dart? It's installed. Can I try? Okay. Now you have it. Save it. Now you have it. You only have the debug one, but then you can add the other one. Anybody else?
రీసైజ్ చేయలేవా
So guys, hopefully we will be doing this only once. So for those of you who are waiting, I think it's good if everybody can. Okay.
Switch 啊，对对。
要把 Visual Studio 打开来是吗？
就那界面呢？
那个，哎，现在有到了。你把那个在 VS Code 里头打开，它的那个项目在 VS Code 里头。
这是 Visual Studio， 这 Android Studio。下
下来，下来。一直
直接拖到这里面。
Android Studio set
Flutter mode debug.
Go to CSEN directory. Okay? I'm sure you'll get it.
अब क्या क्या है
रन कर दिया ये आपको छोटी इंग्लिश
If not, then we'll fix it after the class. Try to follow with your friends. If this is not, I mean, this may take longer time to fix. Okay. All right, we have a little time left. So I want to go to the exercise here. Okay, so we're trying to do mock screens at the moment, play around with screens. What we will need is garbage text, right? So you have this package called Flutter lorem, which creates this lorem ipsum stuff. So in your terminal, write this Flutter pub add Flutter lorem. Okay, so if everybody's done that, let's continue. So the Dart has a math library which needs to be pulled in. Normally, when we pull in the Dart library, we always pull it in as Dart math as math. So that whatever function we call from the math library, we call it as math.something. Okay? So what we will use is, because we want to put different colored images, the colors on those images I'm going to randomly choose, and therefore I need a random number generator. And the way I will do it is there is this random function in Dart math library, and whenever I call this random function with this method next int 10, it gives me an integers between 0 and 9. Okay? So if I have 10 colors, it will allow me to choose one of the 10 colors with this thing. This is already in the repo. You don't have to write it down, but we will use that code in a second. I'm just, giving you an overview of what to do. So the next thing is we will need placeholder images. So there is this website called placehold.co. You specify width and height, and then colors. It creates a two-colored image, a PNG. So what we will do is that we will use this image path as the user's image or whatever, and we'll send these random colors here. The colors it accepts are CSS colors, and we can create a list of colors like this in a constant list, which we can then, using this random integer, we can take from this list. Okay? So then we will also need UUID generator. So this is this long A's, B's, alphanumeric generator. So this package is called UUID package. We will do, Flutter pub add UUID. Sorry, I made a mistake. Flutter pub add UUID. You'll do this to add this package to the project. It will go into the pubspec.yaml file. Then to create a UUID, we'll use this function, UUID v4. .generate. It will create us an ID. Okay? So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a user class. Remember, in the last lecture, I told you about this Dart data class generator, right? This extension that takes a class and creates all the methods as a data class, you know, to JSON from JSON, to map from map, to string, etc., etc. So we will create a user object. I mean, that's the most basic object that we will need in our code. It will have a first name, last name, user ID, email, and image URL. And then we will run the data class generator extension to create all the different things that go with it. We'll do it together. Then we will create a list of user objects. Okay? So our data is going to be a list of, so then we will populate these user objects randomly. Of course, the first name is going to come from the lorem package, and one paragraph, one word from the lorem package. Similarly, last name. The email will be, you know, a lorem@lorem.com, for example. Would be. Image URL will be this, but here we will put the random colors. And then for UID, we will create it from the UID package. Okay? So this is a lot of things to do, but I think we will get there. Okay. Let me add these packages. Flutter pub add Flutter lorem, and then Flutter pub add UUID. So one thing that would be nice to do is we start with a model directory. Okay, so the model directory will be like a user object is a model, right? A dish, orderable dish in a restaurant is a model. So in the lib folder, I create a directory called model. And in the model directory, shall I make it bigger? In the model directory, I create a file called, let's call it user.dart. Okay, so now we're going to create the user class. So the user class, it has, so for now, for simplicity, we will do a user class with an immutable user class. So it will be final string, first name, final string, last name, final string email, final string, what was it? Image URL, UID. Okay, so I've created the properties of my user object. It's complaining. Typically, when it's complaining, there is you can do this. So while you're on it, you do command and dot. You get this menu when you do command and dot. I think in Windows it would be control and dot. Okay, so you get this menu. And which one are we going to use? for final needs required named. Okay, so what's the difference between these two? So let's do the second one. Now this constructor is a positional constructor. So basically you have to give every one of them, and you don't say, name, column, blah, blah, and so on and so forth. It's a positional constructor. It's easier to code when it's a name constructor. So instead, I'm going to go and say, create constructor for final field, required named. So if it's a named constructor, by default, it's optional. So when you say required on top of it, it will be required. Now, this thing has gone all the way to the end. Yeah, when I save it, it's done. Okay, so now I have a user object which I can create, and I can instantiate the user object. But what would be nice is that all the bells and whistles with to JSON, from JSON, to map, from map, that goes with it. And I think when I go onto the object and do command dot or control dot, I get this option because I have this package, generate data class, I get the option generate data class. Once again, how did I get what? I didn't get UUID. I just said UID. We're not at UUID yet. UUID is a package. UID is the user ID. Okay, don't mix it up. I'm using UID because it's the same language in Firebase, so it's better to get used to that.
पैकेज का है वो कौन सा पैकेज है
So this data generator has not worked properly. So when you see this error, so the name generator tried to do this not with the curly brackets, but positional, and therefore it gave me an error. So by putting a curly brackets here, I turned it into a named constructor again, as we started. And then if it's a name constructor and it's a final, it needs a required. Okay? Yes?
So how did you generate the functions on the bottom after you did the required user?
Okay. Let's just go back. Okay, so we have now created this much the class ourselves, right? So then you have this Dart data class generator, this extension. Okay, if you have this extension, then you can go back to your code. User.dart. If you go on the user and do command dot,
I don't see those options.
well, maybe you don't have the.
Yeah, I've got the extension.
Okay.
I've got the extension.
Okay, go back to the user.
It's the same as, like, for example,
एक्सटेंशन इनेबल्ड है
HZ good देना
Can you close and
Done
open
selecting?
or
Command dot.
restart the extension or something? I don't know why.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go over this and I generate the data class. So if you cannot generate the data class now, don't get fixated. We're not going to use it. I'm just showing it. Okay, but if you cannot generate it, it's not a problem. So look what it did. I had a curly bracket here, and it took my curly bracket away, and it turned them into positional parameters. And because it's positional parameters, required cannot be used. So to fix it, I put my curly bracket again. So this is a bug of the generator. So by putting the curly bracket here, it's done. Okay? So that bug is dealt with like this. I think it's important that we look at these type of bugs because when you're coding, you're going to get these. And then it's nice to have that experience. Oh, you know, this is how you fix it. Now, let's look at this one. What's the bug here? It says return user, and then it says too many positional arguments, 0 expected, but 5 pounds. So when this extension tried to create my copy with function, copy with method, okay, it thinks that the way I construct the user is by positional parameters. So if the first name is given as an argument, so first of all, the copy with takes a string question mark, so it could have a null as an argument. If the copy with first name argument is null, this 2 question mark is if it's null question, then use the existing first name, right? This is that. Same thing with last name and so on and so forth, but it thinks that the user is created by a positional constructor. So the way to fix it is I turned it into a named constructor. And the moment I turned it into a named constructor, all my errors are gone. And then there is one more error somewhere. See, it's the same thing. It's returning a user, but it's treating the arguments as positional arguments, not as named arguments. So the moment I tell them that this is the first name, and this is the last name, and this is the email, and this is the UID. It's fixed.
I think you're missing map 947 and 948.
Thank you, Josian. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so now, even though this was a bit painful with this extension, it still gives me a lot of code. All in all, I think I'm still up on this exercise. Now, for example, it gave me a default toString function because when you're debugging your code, you want to be able to print quickly what the content of that class is. Its toString function is like this. It's created like this. Maybe in the toString function, you will not need the image URL and the UID. You will just need the first name, last name. It's possible you can go and edit it. Okay, but the good thing is that generator is quite nice, giving me all of this thing. Can I move on? All right. So we have the user.dart. Now, let's go to my home page. Actually, let's create a new page. Let's create a new page. We'd call it user list page .dart in the pages. Okay? User list page .dart. And this user list page is going to be a state list widget, very simple page. So remember, we have this extension as well, the snippet, state. When I say even STA, it comes this thing, so state list widget. Okay, it gives me the boilerplate. And I'll call it it automatically suggests user list page from the file name, okay? Now the reason it's complaining is because we haven't added the material library, material.dart library. So again, I do command dot import package flutter material.dart. Okay, so that's my status widget. Now, obviously, on my page, I don't want to show a container. What do I want to show here? What am I going to show on my page?
Scroll view, this scroll view.
I'm the device now. What's the next thing in the device? Scaffold, right? So scaffold, okay? So my scaffold will have a body, right? And we will come back to the body, but it will also have an AppBar. And the AppBar, I'm going to just make a simple AppBar. It will have a title of text user list. And the body is something that we will have to fill. Okay, let's for now make it a container. It's an empty body. It just has an AppBar, an empty body. So we've done our scaffold. Now, the user list page is not going to show in my app because it's not the first destination. So to fix that, I go to main.dart, and the home page is now user list page. Okay, so the app is going to just show me the user list page, and what I'm going to see now is just the title. And let's see what I'm seeing. Okay, I just see the user list. Now, between iOS and Android, there is this difference of where to put the title that is fixed by saying, I think, center title Boolean. So in the AppBar, if you do center title Boolean, you should get the title in the middle. Okay, so the title is in the middle. All right, our container is there, it's empty. Let's create, so first of all, let's import, let's create everything here. Okay, it's dirty coding, but we want to just get things done. So we will create, we will import the math here. Okay, it's giving me a yellow squiggly saying that you've imported it, but you haven't used it yet, which is fine. Okay, we've imported the math. And the thing is, while this widget is building, again, this is not a good practice, but this is just to have a quick idea about the things. You know, the structure of the code obviously cannot be like this. All right, so in the build phase, I want to have a variable list of user objects called user list. And at this stage, I can, again, command dot, and I can bring the model user, the user model into the object. This is complaining, the build is complaining because we haven't finished this. Now the user list, is going to be generated with this method of list. So list is the entity, right, for lists, and it has a method to generate things. And what does it need? It needs, it's up there. So it first needs a length, then it needs a function that takes an integer, which we will call, like, say, index, okay? And the generator, and then Boolean, that's automatic, the global equals true, that's the default. Right, so list.generate, let's say 20 items, okay? And the function I'm going to pass it, it's a function of index that returns, where was it? Let's look at the thing again. That returns a user, right? It has to return a user. Okay? So let's do that. Let's return a user. Okay, so basically this list is going to consist of 20 users identical right now, like this. Okay? So we'll go and fix this in a second with the names. Now, with the name, I can quickly change this to, first of all, let's see what it looks like. Let's save this. And before we paint the scaffold on the screen, we're doing these calculations. And actually, we're not putting it onto the scaffold at all. We're just doing it internally. And let's print the user list. Now, it will be able to print because the toString function was defined by the Dart class generator, right? So let's print this. And I'll refresh. Nice. I get 20 John Does, okay? While this is being built. Okay? Yes?
So the toString of the list will call toString for each item in the
Absolutely. 100%, that's correct. So, yeah, the list will just put things into the square brackets, and whatever the toString method gives of the object, if it doesn't have a toString method, then it will say instance of user. Okay, now let's change this one to a lorem. Lorem. It doesn't know what lorem is, so I have to import the library into this page. So for the first name, I've just put lorem parentheses, and then a command dot to import the library. So it just imported this lorem package. Okay, but lorem takes two things, paragraph and words, and we just want paragraphs 1. Words 1. Okay? And similarly for the last name, we want the same thing. And for the email, so this is the interpolation, right? So the $ and curly brackets, also here $ and curly brackets, and now I'm putting in the lorem's inside. Are you following this? So I want to send an email with something, so the $ curly bracket, and then whatever that is, that's a string. So it will basically print whatever comes from the lorem, @ whatever comes from the lorem.com as the email address. And the image URL, let's leave it for now. Actually, with the UUID, we can do this as well. What was the function? I had written it somewhere. How to use that function? Here. UUID v4.generate. So here, I put this. It doesn't know about this, so it needs to be imported. Command dot package UUID save. Okay, so do you see now what happened? The problem is when we said one-word sentences, it also brought a dot at the end. Okay, for now we don't care about it, but it's something that we need to deal with later. But anyway, so the UID is being generated with this function. The lorems are generated. Let me also create a constant list of colors, right? So where were the colors? These are the colors. So now I say constant list string. Guys, if you don't have something urgent to do, then please stay and let's try to finish this. Okay, so now I have a colors object that looks like this, right? And how am I going to use this placeholder image? Where was the placeholder image? So it's this is the syntax, or actually just this much is the syntax. Are you following? So in the image URL, now this one, I want to do the orange and white as random numbers. So they will be interpolations from random colors. Now inside this is going to go colors dot, so from the colors list, right, the colors list that I selected, I should take a random number and print that on the screen. So that would be math dot random dot next int of 10. And the next one should be the same. So let's look at how the images are looking. So now my image URLs are https placehold.co 600 400 sign blue.png and so on and so forth. Okay. So now I've created a mock user data, right, with names and email addresses and UUIDs and sort of different colorful images. Now my objective is to put that on the screen somehow. Okay.